Hello everyone, welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. I am Frederick and I'm very excited to have you here today. You know, security to applications is very important, and when you have your application, you must have a mechanism to protect it. Especially when your app has in connection with database, to be precise, web API. How can you protect this? ASP.NET team has made it possible for us to use an identity manager. An identity manager supports the cookie-based authentication. But in this video, we are going to look at how to authenticate and authorize users using JWT Authentication with Identity Manager. So instead of using the cookie-based authentication, no, we're going to use an JWT Authentication instead. Maybe you're asking yourself, why are you going to use this JWT Authentication? First of all, JWT stands for JSON Web Token. It is a string of characters combined together which comprise of the user identity or user claims. The claims could be such as user ID, maybe username, user role, and etc. Now, this token is being generated from the server and now push it to the client. That is specifically Blazor WebAssembly. Now, after receiving this token, it has to store it in somewhere, a safe place such as local storage or session storage or protected storage. After storing this, what they're going to do here is anytime that you want to make a request to an API, you just have to add this token to the header of the HTTP client before it can make a request. The reason why it has to do that is, you know, when you create JSON Web Token, the server becomes stateless, meaning it doesn't store any information of the user. So any request coming from a client to a server has to fulfill has to contain every information that the server would need to authenticate the user. That is why we need to specify these claims attached to the string token when sending it to the API. But with the cookie base, it is the server that issued the cookie and now sent it to the cookie section of the browser straightforward. It doesn't give it to the client. But here, we are going to receive it from the client. We're going to store it, and anytime that you want to make a request, we're going to add it to the header. As usual, before we jump into this, make sure you have subscribed to this channel and also hit on that notification bell so you never miss out any of our upcoming content. And also, if you enjoy what you're going to see today, please do not forget, it's very important to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps this channel grow. If you want to support us too, by buying us a coffee, we're going to accept it. Thank you so much. Thank you in advance for doing that. Check the video description and I have it over there. You know, this project is going to be in two folds. Maybe first of all, we're going to talk about how to authenticate and authorize user in a web API using Identity Manager. That is talking about .NET 8, okay? And later video, we're going to talk about how to consume this API, authenticated API, inside our Blazor WebAssembly application. But I believe you can do that. If you can't do that, please put out the comment section there and I'll have a video done on that. Okay. I offer training session for people who are interested in Blazor and .NET technologies, talking about the Blazor, which comprise of the both hosting models, and also .NET MAUI, .NET MAUI Blazor Hybrid for mobile applications. So if you are interested, please check the description. There's a mail that you can write me through it. So at the end of this video, you must be able or should be able to create your own custom authentication using JWT with Identity Manager in Web API. So let's jump right into it. Let's create a project here, and I'm going to name it as Demo Custom JWT.NET 8 Blazor Web Authentication and Authorization with Identity Manager Solution. Actually, we are not adding a Blazor WebAssembly yet, but maybe in a later video, we're going to talk about how to consume this. So it's better we add it to the namespace. Okay, so let's create it that way. Now, when you go to GitHub, there's going to be the name that you can be looking up for. So I'll go for blank solution. So that's going to be the solution name. Now we have a solution created. Now let's go in there and I'll add our web API, and that's going to be Identity Manager Server API. So we go to Solution Explorer, Then right click on the solution, the empty solution that has been created, and I click on add new project, and we're going to choose web API. So I have one over here. I'm going to choose ASP.NET Core Web API, and now the name is going to be Identity Manager Server API. So now let's add to the project. So that is the .NET 8. Make sure you choose that. Now, since we're going to create a customized authentication type, so we do not to specify any type here. Let's make it as none. Now click on create. So now that we have our server API Identity Manager project created, what we're going to do here is, since maybe in a later video, we're going to learn how to connect this or consume this API in an Blazor WebAssembly. And it is very important to put all the classes or the models that you're going to be using, both in the server and now the client section, in a class library. So you can be adding this to the project, and I can also add it to the same the other project that you're going to be created in the next video or in future. Okay, so let's add this. Let's go to solution, and now let's add this project, and this is going to be a class library, and that is a class library for C#. And now let's name it a shared class library, because it's going to be used by the API and on the Blazor WebAssembly too. You make sure the framework is also the same as 8.0. Click on create to get it created. So now that we have this created, what we're going to do here is, let's clear this, and now we're going to add this C# class to the server API project. So right click on the dependencies in Identity Manager Server API, and I go to add project reference, and in here make sure you choose the class that has been created now, and I click on OK to get added. The next thing to do here is we're going to install some packages that we're going to be using for our EF migrations and our databases and identity tokens and JWT and a whole lot. Okay, so we're going to install them inside this server API. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to right click on the server API and I'll go to unload project. Now let me save this. Now in project settings, I'm going to have access to this item group where I'm going to have package references. Now I'm going to paste this, and these are the packages that we need. We need authentication.jwt, we need EF core, and we need SQL Server tool for migration. We need tokens for the JWT. We also need the swashbuckle, and also for the filter to give us the UI and also able to authenticate when we have authorized attribute on top of our controllers. And we have this. Okay, so these are the packages that we need. So pause the video and I'll try to install them one after the another. I have installed them already. That is why I just have to copy this. Or even when you're able to, when you have these references, you have to paste them here and you have to reload it, and now everything is going to work. Okay. So if you're not, pause the video, now try to install these packages. Alright, I believe you are done now. So can we continue on? Yes, of course. Let's save this, and I'm going to reload this project with dependencies, which is going to install this or restore these packages to this application. So I'll just go to solution, right click on this server, and I'll go to reload project with dependencies to get this reloaded. Okay, so I'm going to have this, you see, restoring packages, and it's going to restore them. So once you are done with this, the next thing they're going to do here is we're going to create our AppDB context class. And this class is going to inherit from the IdentityDB context, which is an opt-in class, which contains all the table names and the various columns they're going to be using for this identity management. Okay, so let's go to the server section. And we're going to create a folder here and name it as data. So this is an API server. Right click on this. Let's add a folder and I'll name it as data. Let's create a class to this. And the name of this class is going to be the AppDB context. So here it has inherited from this identity DB context. So this is coming from this identity.ef call. And now with this control period, you can now create a constructor for this. But instead of that, you're going to be using, we're not going to use the .NET 8 as introduced. That is the primary constructor. So here, that is C# version 12. So even when you click on this, you can see we have control period. You can see use primary constructor, and very simple one. So that is it. Now, when you take a look at this identity DB context, it has a relationship with identity user. Identity user comprises of the username and the ID. Okay, so maybe you would like to customize it by getting the username, user address, user information that you'll be needing, maybe later on. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a customizer. We're going to inherit from this identity user. So let's go to the same place, folder, right click. Now let's add a new class. And now this new class is going to be application user. So this application user is going to inherit from this identity user. Okay, now in here, let's specify some customized property that we're going to be using. So we need string, and that will be name. And maybe you're going to have access to what else again? Address. Let's maintain this, okay? So let's maintain this. Maybe if you want to add any extra one, then you can put it down here. But for now, you want to get name, because when you check this identity user, if I click on a pip definition here, check what it entails. It has this username, right? So username here is going to be the email. And now we're also specifying the name as well. So the person's name is going to have a person's username. It has phone number and etc. But for now, we want to maintain that. So let's close it up. So we have this. Let's go to the AppDB context. Now in here, we can specify an option here as indicated here. Okay, so with identity context, let's specify a T value, and that's going to be the application user that we have created. Okay, so we are done with that. Okay, very simple one. We didn't know to create any database for that. You know, when you inherit from DB context, you have to specify your database table name and the various columns by specifying the model that you want to use for. But for now, since it's inheriting from this identity, it is an opt-in model, which comprises of the various attributes that we have shown you, and that's what's going to use for the database. So here, don't do anything again, just leave it as it is. Okay, so let's save this. What we need to do here is let's create our connection string, and you know we can do that from the app.json. So let's specify our connection string in here. So let's give the name as default connection, and maybe we can specify our server equal to local. Then you're going to have our database is equal to demo identity DB, and maybe let's have, so let me use custom one and add. So custom demo identity DB, that's fine, right? Okay, so you can give it a name that you want. Now let's have trusted connection. And now let's set this to true. And also in .NET 7 and above, you have to trust server certificate. So set this to true as well. That's all. Once we are done, let's register this connection string in the program.cs file. So come here before the app build. Let me give a var space here, and I'll specify starting. Then maybe you're going to have ending, right? Okay, so in here, let's have our builder.services. .services.appDB context. Specify our appDB context class that we just created. And in here, it needs a parameter. So let's specify an options here. And now with this options, we're going to say options.use SQL, which inherit from the EF core that we installed. Then here, we're going to specify the connection string. So builder.configuration.get connection string. Then this, let's specify the name of the connection string. And that is a default connection. So to make sure we are doing the right thing, we can just come here, grab this, and now save it. You know, copy and paste is very important. It helps you skip some errors. And I can see this default we spelled it wrongly. So let's correct it from here. Copy this, save that, and I go here and I replace it. Fine. Now here, let's handle in case this is not found. So we're going to use in case this is not found. Then we want to, this should come here. So you want to throw new exception, and it's going to be invalid operation exception. And we can say connection string is not found. So it's good to handle errors anytime. So as soon as you see this, you know where you're going to. Okay. All right. So we have this set. Maybe we can put this on the next line in this format. Let me increase. Okay. So now that we have this set, come down here. We have to add our authentication. So add authentication. And this is not just authentication, but rather it's going to be JWT. Let me be specific, isn't it? So we have in two folds. The first one here is going to be identity and also JWT authentication. So add identity and JWT authentication. Okay, so this is going to be the first one is identity. And now with identity, we're going to have builder.services. So .add identity. Now this identity has two models that it has to take. That's the T values. The first one is going to be in the application user. And you know the user that I'm talking about? I hope you've remembered, isn't it? That is the extended class for this identity user class. After specifying this, you need to specify the identity row. So with the row, since you're going to be adding rows to it, okay, we can also extend the row. But for now, maybe if you want to add more info or more properties, you know, basically the row has just the name, the ID, the name, the normalized name, the concurrency, and etc. If you want to add maybe another info to it, then you can extend that. But for now, it is out of the scope. So let's have identity user. Is it user or row? So this is row because user can be found in the application user. So you need not to specify this anymore. All right. So once you have this, we're going to be adding the next one, and that's going to be add entity framework store. And now we need to specify a T value. That's an application DB context class. It's not application, rather it's an app DB context class, isn't it? So app DB context class. I believe you're not doing what I'm doing, right? You're doing the right thing. Okay, so aside from that, we have to be adding sign-in manager because we're going to be using, well, do you want to use sign-in manager here? Well, we're going to be using, okay, so let's add it for maybe later on. We're going to have a look on this. But for now, we can decide to skip this sign-in manager because we're not going to actually use sign-in manager. We're going to use user manager. Okay, so let's maintain this before. Let's add rows because row is very important, and I have to add this identity row. Okay, so now we can terminate this. So Control KD, we save that. So this identity. Now let's go to the JWT authentication. Okay, so with this one, what we're going to do here is we're going to have also a builder.services. So .add authentication. And our authentication, you know, we need to specify some options in here. I'm going to say that these options. So we're gonna have options dot. So let's have default. Okay, so you need default authentication scheme. So here, and now this is going to be JWT default dot authentication scheme. The next one, you're going to have the same thing. So option dot default authentication, or this time going to be challenge scheme is equal to the same JWT default dot authentication scheme. So you make sure you specify this, else when you try to make a request to an API, you're going to have 404 instead of 401. When you put an authorized attribute on top of the controller, if you don't have this, you're going to have 404, okay? And that's going to be not found, but the actual sense here, it is found, just that you are not allowed, and it should be 401. So you make sure you do this. Aside from that, we're going to be adding add JWT bearer, and now with this bearer, it also needs an options. I believe you've seen that, isn't it? So this also needs options. So let's specify this option dot, and now the first one to do here is token. You know, because we have token validation parameters, and it's equal to new. So token validation parameters, then we can open this and I'll specify validate issuer. So you have validate issuer, we set this to true. We can also specify validate audience, set this to also true. Then maybe validate signing key, so issuer signing key, we set this to true. And validate lifetime, so it can check if the token has expired or not. We also set this to true. And now let's specify the issuer and the audience. So validate, is it not validate, rather it's supposed to be valid, because we have valid issuer and a valid audience. So let's have the first one here, going to be the valid issuer. Okay, let's see. So valid issuer. Then we need to specify builder.configuration. Then this configuration, we're going to create a section, and now this section is going to be JWT, and in that we're going to have a key value. So the key here is going to be the issuer. Okay. And now with this, let's make a duplicate of this. Instead of the issuer here, you're going to be audience. And now with this audience, you're going to be also an audience. Okay. Now, after specifying this, let's have an issuer signing key. And this equal to new symmetric security key. So symmetric security key, that is this one. And you have to encode this. So we're going to say encoding, which is coming from system.test. So .utf8.getByte. So we want to get byte of this builder dot not service, but a configuration. And now the section is the key. No, not that key. The section is JWT. And now the key here is going to be the key. Okay, so we want to grab the value for this key. And now since we can return null, we have to make sure we make it in a nullable form. All right, so this is all that we need to have our token work. Control KD, save this, and we can now move forward. Now the next thing here is, we are going to use swashbuckle, or that's the Swagger. And when you have the controller being attributed with an authorized, definitely it's not going to allow you to perform a free or anonymous request unless you come in with a token. So in order to add a token to the header of a request from the Swagger, you have to pass in an option to the Swagger service. Okay, So defaultly, Swagger has been registered as soon as you create a new web API project. You see that's over here. But this time around, you're going to move this, and down here, you're going to specify it here. So adding Swagger, so adding authentication to Swagger UI. Okay, so with this, I need not to. Let me just grab it from here. So this is a very simple thing that we are using. You can see we add the same method of services to add Swagger Gen. Now this Swagger Gen comprises of I think 3 components: the UI, it has the gen, and it has one addition. Yeah. We know here we are adding the security definition, and there's an O auth 2. And now here you can see we want to specify the scheme here. And where do you want to add the token to? In the header. What should be the name? Authorization. What should be the type? Is an API key. Okay, so that's what we are adding, and that is all. Alright, so we are about to finish this. Okay, you don't want to. So here, Control K, we can just simplify this. And when you come down here, you see we have an authorization. So we have to use an authentication first. So app.use authentication. Not authorization. This is the how it must follow. So take note. All right. So we are done here. Okay, we are done. What we're going to do here next is we're going to create our repository. We're going to create our interface and our repository. But before that, let's save this and add database migration. So we can have the tables created for us. So let's build it first. So you know that you've seen it succeeded. So go to Package Manager console and let's add database migration to it. So add migration. And now this is coming from the efcore.tools package that we installed. So let's give it any name at all. I say first. So let's wait for it to get built. And it's going to run all the query for us. So this should be API. It must be the startup project. Let's see. So we have an API. Set this as startup. That's fine. Package Manager console. It is set over here. Now you can do it again. You can see that it is done now. So we have a file created, and that is a whole table that we have. You know, we did not specify any table name like this. It is an opt-in from the Identity Manager. So it has all these available tables in there. And that is what the next code, the next line of code is going to execute this into a real thing, okay, in the database that we can see. So with this, we're going to say update -database. And now let's run this. We're going to run all this using this SQL command. And it's going to get this created. So you can see, wow, we have this issue. Let's go to solution. Now click on the same project here. And now this set this to false. Save this. Let's do it again. Yeah, so it is done now. So when you check our database, you're going to have access to this. Remember the name here, it is custom, identity, etc. Let's see. So SQL server. Now go to my desktop, databases. And I can see I have this custom demo identity DB. That is this one. So if I open this table, I'm going to have a whole lot of tables in here created by the opt-in Identity Manager. Let's wait. You see we have them here. What I want to focus here much is the identity user. This is the first table that we need. The second one here is identity row async. We're also going to use this. So let's open this as well. The last one here is you're going to be using ASP net users row, which is going to comprise of the rows and now the users. So we have this. That's fine. Now let's check and see. So we see user ID and a row ID. User has no row. There's no user here which has a row, and there's not even a row ID there. Check here. There's a row because it has the ID name, normalized name and concurrency stamp. So here, if you want to specify more options or more info on that is why you need to extend this identity row class. We did not do that. Okay. When you check this ASP.NET users, you can see initially it was having only username here, but we extended by adding name. So it has in here, and that's why we made it as application user. Right. Okay, and that is all. So you can see we have these 3 tables, and that's what we've been looking through or we'll be watching this. For now, it is empty. Now let's go in there and create a repo. So, we're going to be using, since later video or future video, we're going to be consuming this API or this identity inside an WebAssembly project. We like to create an instance or one public repository, and that's going to be one public interface. Okay. Then you're going to be using it both in the client section and in the API identity section. We want to escape repeating ourselves, because what you're going to be using here is the same as what you'll be using in the client section. So why don't you put it in the share library so we can share among the two? That's a good idea, isn't it? Let's do that. So we go to solution, and I can see in our library, right click, let's add a folder to this. Let's name this as contract, which is interfaces. So contract, and now this contract, we want to give it an interface here. Choose interface, iUser or iUser account. It's an interface because that's why I added I. Okay. Now with this, we're going to be, let's make this as public. You can just clear this to make the class simple or the interface. Let's save that. Let's create our models first. So we need to create our models. And now here it's going to be DTOs because we did not create any database. So all the modules are going to be creating here, it is a DTO. That's a data transfer object. That's going to transfer data from the client to the API. That's fine. Okay, so let's first create our user. Okay, so we're going to have maybe that's going to be user DTO. So solution. Now let's create another folder here and name it as DTOs. So folder DTOs. Let's add one module to this. And I will say this user DTO. So user DTO, you want to have access to the following properties. So let's make here as public. You can clear this. Okay. So we need an ID. ID is not going to be required because when creating an account, you don't need to provide any ID. Unless you're retrieving an account from the database, that is where you're going to use an ID. So we don't want to make it as required. We have name, we have email, password, and a confirmed password. And I can see we are using this confirm, and in .NET 8, you can use this name of, instead of specifying the name of this property in a double quote here, you can now use a name of which reference to the property itself. Okay, so now we have this user. Can't you also have a login DTO? Yes, you can. So let's also specify a login DTO because then we're going to be logging in as well. So add your class, and that's login DTO. And this is going to handle only 2 properties. The first one is going to be the email, and the next one or the last one is going to be the password. Okay, so we clear this. All right, so we have an email and we have our password. We save that. Now, definitely, when you create this, you're going to return a response. When the user registers, you have to return a response. The state of the process, was it successful or error occurred whilst creating an account for the user. So in doing so, we have to create our service responses. Okay, so I'm going to create one giant class and I name it as service response. It's going to contain multiple responses. So this is going to be the same DTO because we're going to be using for data transfer or information communicator. So we say service responses. And now in these service responses, we're going to create 2 records or record class. First one going to be the general response. We're going to be used for the general type. And the next one here is going to be let's make it as public. It's going to be limited to login response. We're going to handle with token. So after user has been created, you have to generate token when user tries to log in, and you have to return this. And now maybe we can add message to it. Okay, that's fine. Let's save this. So we have these models created. Okay, and the one last left here, it is a user session. When it gets to the app session or when it gets to the client session, definitely we need a mechanism to handle this and now store. But for now, I don't think it is necessary to use the user session. But well, let's try that and see. Maybe we're going to be using this in our repo. So let's have user session class created in addition to this. And that's what we're going to use to prepare the user info for token generation. Okay, so let's add a class here. We say it is user session, which has 4 properties. So it's a record class. And on this record, we are using ID, name, email, and our row. This is what we're going to use to populate our claims. So in our claims, we're going to have access to the row, the ID, the name, the email. Okay, so let's save this. Now our models are well done created. What we're going to do here is in our interface where we have this user interface. Okay, this is in the contract folder from the shed because it's going to be used by both the feature client that I'm going to create and also the current API that we have. So in that, we need to specify 2 methods. For now, we are focusing on only creation and our login. So account creation and our login. So you can see from the create account, we need to use a general response because here there's no return type of token. But when it gets the login, we're going to have a token, so we have to return a token. These are the various payloads. That's fine. So now we have this. The next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to create an implementation to this. Now here we are using a separation of concern. What it means here is we don't want to put in code which is not necessary to be used by any. If it is limited to one object or one project, why don't you create it in that subfolder in that project instead of putting it in the shared? We want to put it in the shared. It's going to be added to the client section. Meanwhile, the client also do not need that. So let's put it limited to the server. So here we need to create a repo. So let's create a folder here and I'll name it as repositories. And maybe you'll be asking me, what is repository? It is just a class which contains definition of an interface. So here, let's right click. Let's add a new class. And now this is going to be an account repo. Account repository. Now this account has to inherit from the main interface. That's the iUser account. And our control period, we're going to extract the interfaces in it. Okay. So in here, we can't use the AppDB context class because it doesn't have any table to work with. All the tables are inherited from the IdentityDB context. So in order to have access to the account tables that we have in the database, we have to use user manager and a row manager. Specifically, user manager is going to have access to all the tables and the columns that we have. So we have to inject them here. And now with the help of this primary constructor, we can inject all of them on top here. So instead of having this, creating a constructor and injecting them in here, all that we need to do here is to create a construct, the name of the app, passing this bracket here, and I'm passing the user manager, which inherit from application user. Take note. So this is a standard class that we created for this identity manager. That's identity user. And now we have this row manager for identity row, and now we have this I configuration to have access to our config file. Okay, now we have not set the configuration yet, so we have to navigate to the app setting.json, and now in that we can specify this solution app setting.json. Now in here, let's specify the JWT as a section name. These are the keys and these are the value. But here, this port is not the accurate one. You know, this must be a key and the minimum number here must be 16. It must be kept safely because this is what we're going to be using for authorizing the user. So here we have this issuer, and to get this the accurate port, go to solution, properties, line settings, and you can see we have the port in here where we go for the HTTPS. It is 7202. Let's grab this, go back to the app settings, and I'll paste it in here. So when we have our app, the client created, the client port is going to be the audience because that's going to receive from this, and now the API is going to be the issuer. So communication happens between the issuer and the audience. Okay, so we have this. So everything is set here, and that's why we are having this I configuration, so we can retrieve the data from that section. Now when you get to create an account, this is all you want to do. So when you get to create an account, we first have to make it as an async, because what we're going to be using here, using the identity manager must be an async task. And in here, we're going to have access to this. Let's have a look. Here we are checking if the model come in. If the payload is null, then return model is empty. If not, then you want to create new application user. Okay, so I'm going to say this is an application user. So you're creating new application user, and our new application user has in the following properties. It has what? This name, email, password, hash, and this username. So if you right click on this, you know this is an extended class. It has just a name, but it is inheriting from this identity user. If I right click on this and I go to pip definition, it also has this identity user. Okay, and I can see it has this username. Now let's see. So if I go to identity user, pip definition, it will say it has this, take note, two-factor enabled, phone number. You can see it has all this email and username, etc. Okay, so that's what it's having or it is using. Let's close this. So we can extract this from the interfaces or the properties in there. And now from the password hash, we need to specify in the raw password because this system is going to encrypt this. So you can see it get or set a sorted and now hash representation of the password for this user. So there's no need to use any bcrypt to encrypt the password. No, this is going to do it automatically for you. Isn't that nice? Yeah, it's very simple. So after gathering or populating the user as an application user, that is what we're going to do. We're going to check, we're going to find from the database table. So in a normal sense, if you're using a normal database, using the DB context class, you have to get it maybe user is equal to maybe appdbcontext.user.first or default async, where the user email is equal to the email coming in, a whole lot. By using this identity manager, just simple, and of course, going to make it happen. We get it from the database and check, is the email there already? If yes, then return user registered already. But if it is not there, then we want to create this user. So it means you want to add and save it. So by creating, you're going to pass in the user that we have gathered over here, and I'll pass in the current password. Now also this is also going to set it or hash it for you. This is a raw password. It's going to hash it as this password has done it. After doing this, you can now check. It's going to return a Boolean expression here. Is this successful or not? So we're checking if it is not, then return error occurred. And here we can handle this error, what actually caused it. Because user email is not found and it has problems. So maybe we can log this and now extract the message here. You can extract the description from this, okay? And this can be done from using this created user, and you can have an errors in here now select. So you can see when if I click on this, I have this dot, because we have errors here. So this errors contains all the error that made this couldn't work. You can extract it and now store it somewhere, or now even send it to log it somewhere for an external checked. Okay, so if this gets created, meaning if successful created, if user is created, then we want to assign default role. Now here to assigning role, we want to check we're using only admin and now user. Okay, so you first check if this role name exists. If admin exists, it means that somebody has been registered as an administrator already, and admin must be registered once in the application. Later on, we can manage users. You can add more admins, you can remove, you can delete admins and etc. or users or roles. But for now, we want to check if admin is there already. It means it has been created, because the first person comes in has to get a role created and now assign that role to that person, and that's all. Once the subsequent ones must be added to a user role. If user role is not created, then create it and now add. So here we first create over here. If it is not found, and now add a current user, return account created. If it is not, if this is created already, it means admin is already there, then all the subsequent ones are going to be added by user. So check if user is there. If it is not created, and now add it. So if it is not there, create it. If it is there, then straight and now add it and now return account created. That's what we are doing in here, isn't it? That's it. So let's save this here. And I make sure before we run this application, we check our tables here. Now you can see when I refresh it, empty. I believe you've seen that. Have you also checked yours? You have the same thing, isn't it? That's fine. Now we're going to create our controller so we can run this. Now let's go to the controllers folder, and I'll see, let's right click, and let's add a new controller here. So this is going to be an API, make sure, and we need an empty one. Maybe you can go in for the CRUD one that you can just create and do all stuff. But for now, let's have this this one as an account controller. So the route is going to be API/account. That's right. Now when it gets to the registration, this is what we are. You can just create one endpoint to handle this registration. So in here, this is what we're doing. And now we have to inject this user account. And you know, with the help of .NET 8 or C# 8, we can now work with primary constructors. So instead of creating a constructor from this here, now injecting and initializing, no, don't do that again. It is a kick. Use this one. Very simple one. Optimizing our code. Okay. So we have this. All right, set. And now we call this a return an OK, because as soon as it's able to get connected to our service, it means connection was established. But maybe you're going to have an error, which the error is going to contain by this response. Okay, so you want to return it to the user. Because here we did customize our own responses that we want based on the stages. So we have to return OK. As soon as that response is available, get it to the user. So let's see, now we have this. Let's run this application and see if we've done everything correctly for a registration to be done. Let's see. All right, so we have our account here. Let me zoom it. Okay, I believe you can see that, isn't it? That's fine. We have, because this is an authorized attribute or the authorized feature that we added to the authentication system to the Swagger by installing this package, the swagger.filter package. So we can have this. Now let's register this and see. So click on this, try this out. And now in here, let's see if I pass in the same user at email. Now let's pass in password over here as user at 123. This is my strong password ever. So user at 123. So test yours. When you're done, click on execute. Now let's see the response. You're going to have account created. If yes, it means everything is working. Oh my God. Now you can see from here we have this error, and it's saying something unable to resolve service for the type this and this and this and that. I believe you know what this is talking about, right? As soon as you see service, what comes to mind? DI, dependency injection. And we did not do that. We forgot. So let's go and do that. And we can do that quickly in that program.cs. And in that, we need the interface, the general interface, and our limited class, implementation class, or the report that we have just created. So we go to quickly solution. Now check here. Have you seen this program? Click on that. And maybe down here, we're going to add this. Our scope, user account. You know, there's an interface that we just created, and this is also the repository that we have. Save this, and I believe everything must work out now. So let's quickly check it out. Do you have to rebuild this? I believe so. Okay, so let's try this out again, and I'm sure by now there won't be any issue anymore. So user at 123. Have you tried yours? Did you get it? Let's see. That's fine. So we have it, account created. Now let's quickly check, was it created for administrator or user? Because you know in settings models we say that the first person, the first account must be assigned to admin, the rest must be assigned to what, user. Let's quickly check. So we go to this ASP.NET users, let's refresh this, and then we're going to have this user in here. Exactly. So you can see we've seen that. That is this one. And now you can see from this user that we have, the ID of this user is, I believe you cannot see this, isn't it? But I can see that. It ends with 9E. Let's go to the rows here and now check. Do you have any row, admin row created? Yes, of course. That's an admin row. And it entered 09. Let's go to ASP.NET rows and now see the kind of rows that the user has. Is the admin? Yes, so you can see the admin here, it is for 09, that's the row ID. And then the admin person here, it is 9E. So defaultly, the first person has been assigned to a row ID of an administrator. And now we have one administrator, one row created. That is this admin. Let's register the next person and see what's going to happen next. Okay. So here, I'm not going to do anything much. I just want to go there and I'll change it and add just one to it. It turns it out. Click on execute. Let's see. Okay, so done. We have the same thing, account created. Now quickly, let's check it out. So if I refresh this, you can see we have a user created. And now the ID here, if I check, it is 021. Let's check user row. So ASP.NET users, refresh this, and we have 2A for the second person. Let's check the ASP.NET row, user ID, row ID, refresh this, and now who is inheriting 2A, 2A, 2A. Let's see. So let me expand this. 2A, that is what the user, that is a row ID. So you can see all the subsequent users are going to be registered here. If I decide to add the last one, see, let's make this as 2. Execute this. Done. Let's check it out. If I refresh this, what's going to happen? So you have 1C, this is the user, and now 021. So 021, it is for the row. If you don't believe me, let's quickly check. The row which ends 021, that is the user, you see? So all the subsequent registrars are going to have this ID of user. There is a row of user. Only the first person going to be assigned as admin. But for now, that's what you want to have our models to contain. Okay, maybe later on, you can customize yourself and now you can add multiple admins. You can add users, you can revoke a user row, and etc. A whole lot. Okay, so now that it's working, let's handle the login system. So let's go to the account repo, and now in here, you know, this must be an async. So this can be simplified. We can remove this. The same thing applies to this one. You can also remove that because we've added the namespace already. Now from this login, the first thing that we're going to do here is, you know, we are going to, when the model or the payload comes in, which comprises of the email and the password, we are going to get from the database, that's the user manager, and now check if that email is found. If the email of the ID is found, then we're going to check the password. Does it correspond to what it has in the database? If yes, then instead of using a sign-in manager, we're going to use a cookie. We're going to use a JSON Web Token instead, so we can generate the token and return it to the user. Okay, so this is what we're going to do first. Let's have this method in here, very simple one. Maybe what this method I have created, we can optimize it. I believe you can do that, okay? But for now, we're talking about optimization here. You want to focus on the concept, okay? So here, that's what we are doing. If this model is null, then return the token here is going to be null, and return login container is empty. I'm not sure this is going to be empty because when you consume this in the client, then we're going to use the data annotation validator to validate it before it gets to the API. It's very important. So maybe you can also check it as well. And now, in case it is not null, we want to get the email. So if it is not found, then tell the person user not found because email is not in our system. We can find the information. And if it is found, then we want to check password is. So we're going to check the current user which has been found and the password, the current password. It returns a Boolean expression here. So is it true or false? If it is false, it means your password is not correct. Tell the person invalid email or password. It's very risky to tell the person that invalid password. It tells the person that one, the email is working well. So if the person is not the actual person, then you are doomed, isn't it? You're going to try as much as possible to get it authenticated. So tell the person either your email or password is invalid. Okay, this is my suggestion. You can turn it any way around that you want. If it is not, or if it is the same, then you want to get a row from the user. So get row, okay, from the user. And now here, it's going to get a whole lot. This rows here is in the plural form. So we have to, since here we want to assign only a single row, we can use first to get the first row. And here we want to prepare this user session for the token generation. So we pass in the ID, the name, the email, and the row. This is just the parameter that I need for my generation token. These are the claims I'm going to be using. You can decide to skip the row. You can decide to add row. You can decide to use only one property in there to handle for your claim. But for now, I want to maintain the theory. So I'll teach you how to add row because we've done that in the configuration. So you have to also use the row in here. Then call this method. This method has to return a token as a string. Then return this login response, which takes in the parameter of flag, token type here, and add the message. Okay, so let's create this method. And this method is going to generate the token for us. It's very simple. Just about 15 lines of code, and then we are done. So you can even optimize this to give you maybe 5 or 6. Yeah, I trust you know you can do that. So generate token in here, and now you can see we are using the system, get a security key from the configuration file that we use. We've used this config, get credentials. So you're using the security key here, extract credentials from using this algorithm HMark SHA-256. With a new feature of .NET 8, you can use 384, 512, and etc. Okay, but for now, let's maintain 256. Let's prepare the claims. We have the ID. You don't need to convert to toString because, ID is set to string already. So, here it is a string. I believe this is string, so we can specify in a string. Yes, a string. So, there's no need for this. We have the name, we have the email, we have the row, and that's fine. And here we want to write a token. So to write a token, we need to specify the issuer, the audience, the claims, the expiry date is 1 day. For now, we are not adding auto refresh. That's a refresh token. Maybe if you want to add as well, let me know. I believe you can do that because I've made a video on how to implement this refresh token system. I'll leave that in the description. But if you want us to implement a refresh token based on this identity type, let me know also. And maybe I'll have a separate video done on that too. Then we have this signing credential. That is a credential that we have created here. This was able to obtain because we use the security key and we use an algorithm to encrypt it, and we have it set as credential. Then to write token, you have to call this method to write this token to the handler, and that's going to return as a string format because the return type here, it is for string. Take note. So we get it right here and I return. That's what we are doing. Very simple. Let's go to the controller and add an endpoint to get it, the token, and I'll display it for us. So inside our controller, it's the same thing that we are doing, just that here, since they are all HTTP posts, we need to specify a different route for that. And this is login. So call this login account, passing this login DTO, and I return the response. Very simple and easy one. So here, let's run again and see what we're going to have. So in here, we've registered already. Do you remember that? So now let's go in there and log in and see if our account is going to be created. Now this is an admin. This is the first one. So this is an admin. So if I say that user at 123, click on execute, and I'll take note of this. Let's see what we're going to have. We're going to have a token. Yes, I'm sure I'm going to have it. Yeah, that's fine. This is our token. So let's grab this. This is our token. Okay. Now, if I return as a user, I'm going to also have the token. But to check this well, let's go to the controller and I'm trying to attribute here with an authorize. So I'm going to have two methods of the same type. I'm going to override this solution, weather forecast controller. Now here, let me just override this. I have this one, and the route here is an admin, and the row here is an admin. So it means only admin can have access to this. It's return a range of 1 to 10. Now I want to return the same thing to the user, meaning only users can also call this method. I want to show you that the row authorization is also working after we've authenticated the user. So take note. Don't worry, don't mind me. Okay, so we have this author attribute, and the row here is also user. So meaning that only users can have access to this, and it's taking a range of 1 up to 5. This is 1 up to 10. Okay. Normally, the admin has bigger one than the user. Okay, so now you have this. Let's save this. And now let's see. So if I open this, get refreshed, because you have this key alongside the any. If I click on this without authenticated, let's see what happens. I'm going to have 401. Click on this. 401. It means you're not authorized. The same thing applies to the user. Try this out. Execute it. The same. Now let's log in as an admin and try to see. If you log in as an admin, execute this, going to have it correctly done. But for user, going to have forbidden 403 because you're not authorized to have access to the user. Let's try that. So here, you're going to say user at 123. Let's execute this. You have a token. Grab this token. Make sure you do not add the double quote. Copy this. Now go to this section, authorize, passing bearer, space. I hope you get it. Click on authorize. Authorize. Oh, that's fine. It is done now. Now let's go in there and check it up and see. So if I click on admin, 1 to 10, execute this. You can see I have it over here, 1 to 10. Now if I right click on this and go to inspect elements, you can see it has added the header over here as an authorization, and that's the bearer key here. Take note. Not taking note. Netcode-Hub, click on the same execute, and I have an admin line here. Check it out. We have an authorization set over here, and that's the token that we have just added. This has a lifetime of 1 day, 24 hours. Okay, so maybe 1 day. After 1 day, it gets to expire. Then you yourself implement the refresh token. Thank you. Okay, so this is working, but let's try to execute the client session and see. So the user, this for admin, is working. Let's try the user. Try this up. Yeah, 403, it is forbidden. Right, so this is forbidden. Now, you can see that's over here. 403 means forbidden. Now, to do this, we have to also log in as user. So, it was user 1. Then, execute this. We have our token. This is a user token. And now, with this user token, if you try to log in as admin or get the API with admin, you're going to still have a forbidden because it's only users who can have that logout. And now passing the same bearer, paste this and authorize that. Close it up. And now let's go in there. First of all, we don't want to pass this admin. So let's hit on it and see. Whoa, we have see 403 forbidden. You are not required to do that. Only users can do that. Please. That is what it's telling you. So click on this user. Click on execute and you must have 1 to 5. 1 to 5. And that is it. So we're able to achieve add using Identity Manager and we're able to use this JWT Authentication to authorize and authenticate users based on an API request. Thank you for watching this video. I believe it is clear. The source code of this will be at the GitHub, so check the video description. If you want to also buy us coffee to support this channel or this video, hi, I'll be glad to receive it. Thank you in advance for doing that. And if you're interested in learning all these stuff, please, I have one-on-one coaching session. So check the description, email there, can just write me through that. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to catch you up